Bob and Doug McKenzie, two unemployed brothers with a penchant for mischief, stumbled upon an abandoned brewery on the outskirts of town. With Halloween approaching, they hatched a wild idea to turn the brewery into a haunted attraction to earn some quick cash. Little did they know that the brewery held dark secrets that would unleash a terrifying ordeal upon them. As Bob and Doug set to work, strange occurrences plagued them. They heard faint whispers and laughter echoing through the halls, but brushed them off as their own imaginations playing tricks on them. However, as they delved deeper into the brewery, they discovered old and strange markings on the walls that seemed to hint at something sinister past. During their first night of the haunted attraction, a curious patron accidentally broke into a hidden room and released a swarm of moths into the movie theater. The once entertained audience turned hostile, and chaos ensued. Bob and Doug managed to escape the angry crowd, but their hopes of earning money were dashed. Determined to salvage their plan, Bob and Doug decided to investigate the brewery further. They stumbled upon a hidden laboratory where they found Brewmeister Smith, the former owner of the brewery, performing sinister experiments. They learned that Smith had been tampering with the beer, adding a mind-control drug that rendered the consumers docile and susceptible to his commands when triggered by certain tones. Bob and Doug also discovered that John Elsinore, the previous owner of the brewery, had been murdered by Smith, and his daughter Pam was in danger. They confronted Pam's bumbling Uncle Claude, but he captured them and locked them in a room. Meanwhile, Pam, who had been unknowingly exposed to the mind-control drug, began exhibiting strange behavior. She lured Henry Green, her father's friend, into the brewery tunnels, where Brewmeister Smith took control of his mind. Together, they captured Pam and locked her in a tank with Bob, intending to fill it with beer and drown them. As the beer rose in the tank, Bob and Doug frantically think of a way to escape. They managed to break free just in time, with Bob consuming all the beer and expanding to a cartoonish size, and head explodes allowing them to burst out of the tank. With the help of Rosie, a former hockey player turned mental patient who had also fallen under Smith's control, Bob and Doug confronted Brewmeister Smith and Claude. A chaotic showdown ensued as Rosie led a revolt among the brainwashed patients, while Bob and Doug distract Smith and Claude. In the midst of the chaos, Pam regained control of her senses and helped Bob and Doug defeat Smith by unleashing the spirit of John Elsinore, who had possessed the brewery's electrical system. Smith was electrocuted, and the brewery collapsed in flames. In the aftermath, Bob and Doug were hailed as heroes, and Pam and Rosie found solace in each other's company. The town celebrated their victory, but as Bob and Doug loaded the contaminated beer kegs to be disposed of, they heard faint whispers and laughter coming from the brewery ruins. They exchanged nervous glances, realizing that the mystery was far from over. Months later, Bob and Doug started a beer store, but strange occurrences continued to follow them. They often heard eerie whispers and saw shadows in the corner of their eyes, but every time they investigated, nothing was there. The mystery seemed to persist, and they couldn't shake off the feeling of being watched. One night, as they closed up their beer store for the evening, they heard a familiar sound coming from the basement, the faint tones that had triggered the mind-control drug in the beer. Bob and Doug exchanged worried looks, remembering Brewmeister Smith's diabolical plan. Curiosity got the better of them, and they cautiously descended into the dark and musty basement, armed with flashlights and a cold brew. They followed the sound, which seemed to be leading them deeper into the cellar of their store. The air grew colder, and the atmosphere grew more sinister with each step. As they reached the bottom of the stairs and looked around the eerie darkness, they stumbled upon a hidden chamber that was covered in cobwebs and dust. As they opened the door and looked to the dark void, and there stood a mysterious figure dressed in tattered brewing robes, facing away from them. The figure was humming the same tones that had triggered the mind-control drug in the beer. Bob and Doug called out, but the figure a hoser he didn't respond. They cautiously approached, and as they got closer, they realized with horror that it was Brewmeister Smith, somehow still alive and continuing his dark experiments even after his apparent demise. Smith turned around slowly, revealing a twisted and evil smile on his face. His eyes glowed with an unnatural light, and he spoke in a hollow, otherworldly voice. He revealed that he had made a pact with a malevolent spirit that had possessed their beloved beer store, and he had become its willing vessel, seeking revenge on those who had foiled his plans. With a wave of his hand, Smith unleashed a horde of moths, which swarmed around Bob and Doug, disorienting them like a bunch of real drunks. He then chanted the same tones, trying to trigger the mind control drug in their systems. Bob and Doug fought valiantly, using their own weird thought to resourcefulness fend off the moths and resist the mind control. As the battle raged on, Pam and Rosie arrived, having heard about the strange occurrences. Together, they joined forces to confront Smith and break his hold over the brewery. They used Pam's to navigate through the moth-infested cellar and reach Smith's lair. With Doug's clever distraction, Pam and Rosie managed to disable Smith's equipment and disrupt the tones, breaking his connection with the malevolent spirit. Smith screamed in agony as the spirit left his body, and the store's cellar shook with a violent tremor. Bob, Doug, Pam, and Rosie raced to escape the collapsing cellar and narrowly avoiding falling debris and collapsing tunnel. They emerged into the night, just as the cellar crumbled into ruins. In the aftermath, the town declared the store off limits, and Bob and Doug decided to leave town, feeling that the mystery was finally resolved. They bid farewell to Pam and Rosie, who decided to stay in town and start a new chapter together. As they drove away, Bob and Doug couldn't help but feel a sense of relief, but also a lingering unease. They knew that the malevolent spirit may have been vanquished, but the whispers and laughter they had heard in the brewery still haunted them. They vowed to keep the brewery's secrets to themselves, but they couldn't shake off the feeling that the horror was not entirely over. And to this day, the abandoned store remains shrouded in mystery and darkness, holding secrets that may never be fully unraveled. The end.